So in this one, what I'm going to do is show you how to use a lattice deformer. It's going to be somewhat similar to using the wire deformer, but a little bit different. So here we have our N. Just so you can see something, if I hit play, because this has the ocean shader, you can see it's actually affecting the surface, which is really cool. So, okay. So to do that, I'm going to select the geometry. I'm going to go to constraint. I'm sorry, not constraint. I'm going to go to deform. And you can see there's a whole bunch of these. You could do different nonlinear ones. But what we're going to do is use a lattice one. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to hit lattice, and it's going to create this here. Now, what you can do is you can change different STU. So S will change the number this way. T will change the number this way. Back to 5 here. And U will change the divisions this way. Okay, so depending on what your needs are and what you have, it may make sense for you to do certain things. Okay, so I'm going to kind of leave that up to you. So I am going to maybe make this, let's say 4. Let's see. We do, let's say 3. No, not that way. Let's do 2 here. Let's try doing 3 this way. Okay. So I'm going to break it up this way. Okay. This is how I'm picturing this. Now what a lattice does is this. When you grab a piece of a lattice, it will, okay, let's try that again. You right click, you go lattice point. You can select a point, and then you can bend it and flex each of those points. And it's basically like a warp, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to make this lattice. I'm going to make controllers to kind of control the lattice, okay? So it's going to be pretty easy. I'm just going to go back to front. So each lattice point I control, I'm going to always control 2, the back and the front ones, okay? But obviously, you can decide how you want to break it up. So I'm going to right-click. Oops. I'm going to right-click, go lattice point. Let's try that again, lattice point. I'm going to select these 2, and instead of having to manually do it this way, I'm just going to cluster it. So I'm going to go to Form, Cluster. Lattice point, and I'm just going to hit G since it's the last thing I did. Select these 2, G, 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 G. Okay, so basically I have these various clusters that will control each section, if you will, of this, okay? So it gives me a decent amount of flexibility, and I should be able to warp it in any number of ways. Now what I need to do is make controls in order to animate each chunk of those, okay? So simplest way to do it is just create curves. So I'm going to create nerves primitives, and I'm going to do circle. Now I'm going to do W, and I'm going to hold V for point snap. And there is, actually, I'm going to leave that one there because that's right at center, which is right where that one is. Now, actually, I'm going to hold V. I'm going to point snap it up to that cluster that we created. And let's scale this down. And go up just a touch. Okay, and I'm gonna hit E, and I'm gonna hold J for increment, and we'll make it 90 degrees that way. Good. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and oops. Well, I have it selected just so I don't have to do it each time. I'm gonna go to the shape node, object display, drawing overrides, enable overrides, and I will change this to yellow. Okay, W, Control D, and hold V. All right, Control D, Control D. Now what I'm going to do is that the model's in the way, so I'm going to go to Show, and I'm going to turn polygons off to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to hold V, Control D, and V, Control D, and V, and Control D, and V, Control D, and V, Control D, and V. All right. So now I'm gonna do is just rename these. So I'm gonna write down the line. So I'm just gonna call this one N underscore controller 01 underscore CRV. All right, and I'm just gonna go ahead and copy that. Control C or Command C, and we will paste it. Control V, and I'll make this number 2 because I don't have a better naming convention. Control V will make this number 3. 3. And this one, name it number 4. So depending on what you have and stuff, obviously, you can do a different number of these. You could make it just up and down, like just 2 of them, you know. You don't have to do quite so many. I probably even did more than really I should have. But it's always good to have control. But a lot of times that's kind of the rub, is, you know, do you want to have a lot of control or do you want to have ease of use? A lot of things I would say are sort of like that. But, you know, it is what it is. And none. Okay. Okay. So, we got all those going on. So I got all my curves. Now what I need to do is, like, I'm going to create one more. So we're going to create nurse primitives circle. And I'm going to scale this down a little bit. And we're going to name this one End Controller Master. Alright, and I'm going to go to Attribute underneath the Shape node. Boom, and we're going to make this one red. Good. And I'm going to go to Show. I'm going to do None. And then we're going to do Show NURBS Curves. That way I see everything. I see just the curves. Select all the curves. Lastly, select the master and hit P. Now I'm going to select all the curves. I'm going to go Modify Freeze Transforms to clear out their values. And then I'm also going to do Edit Delete by Type History. Good. Now I will do Show All again. And what I'm going to do is basically parent each one of these clusters to the corresponding curve. So again, I'm going to go to Show. I'm going to turn polygons off. Select this, then this, P. So the cluster, then the handle, or then the controller curve, P. Cluster, curve, P. Cluster, curve, P. Cluster, curve, P. Cluster, curve, P. And cluster, curve, P. Cluster, curve, P. Cluster, curve, P. Okay. All right. And we will turn the polygon back on. And what you'll notice is now when I move this, it will move the object itself, but I can also grab each one of these individual pieces and it will move that. Okay. So you might want to play around with how you want your cluster or your lattice. Really, it's the thing that's going to kind of control it. But this gives it a decent amount of control. Okay. So that's all looking pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is go Windows, Hypergraph Hierarchy, and just try to clean this up. And I'm going to make a new group, Control G, and I'm going to call this my non-transform group. Non-transform underscore GRP. And in that, I want to have the lattice. So I'm going to select both of them, middle mouse button, click and drag, and drop it onto non-transform. I'm also going to want NGO. So I'm going to take my NGO here, middle mouse button, click, and drag it to non-transform. I'll delete this old node. Good. So that's my non-transform. And I'm going to make another one with nothing selected. Hit Control G, makes another null group. I'm going to call this my transform underscore GRP. And I'm going to go ahead and put the controller underneath of that. Okay. So then I'm going to take both of those, Control G, and we're just going to call that my N group. N underscore GRP. Beauteous. All right. So now everything's all up in there. That's good. But you can see, I want to hide things so I don't accidentally move them in ways that I do not want. So I'm going to select all of my clusters, and I'm going to hide those. Control H. That way they're not in there. I'm going to select my lattice and Control H that too. I also don't want it to the lattice. I want to control the lattice. I just don't want them, you know, whoever the animator is, to accidentally affect them in some sort of weird way. Now, last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the geometry itself and go to the attribute editor, underneath object display, drawing overrides, enable overrides, and I'm going to switch it to reference. This allows me to not select the geometry. Now I can move this, I can grab this, move it different ways, but I have a weird sort of flexibility using this lattice in order to select it in general, and I can animate each one of these chunks. So you can try different setups, but this is basically how that works. Okay, so lastly, I'm going to select anything. I don't care. Select this. Hit the up arrow as high as you can until you get to your end group, the highest in the hierarchy. And then I'm going to go ahead, because right now if I turn this off, it just turns off the geometry, because that's the only thing we assign to that display layer. But if I select something, hit all the way up, I'm going to add the whole group. Right click, add selected objects. Now when I turn it off, that's off. Okay? So there you go. Good. And that's it. So now I'm going to save it. That's the next version. And we'll save it as 6 and save. And that is good. So now we have a lattice rig, if you will.